Today's film is a horror thriller from 2022 titled The Invisible Man. The film opens with the story of an abusive tech entrepreneur named Adrian, who is said to have terrorized his partner, Cecilia, through continuous abuse. Hence, Cecilia drugs him one night and decides to run away once he becomes unconscious. At first, she rinses Adrian's glass of water to get rid of the fact that she had drugged Adrian's water with sleeping pills. With a racing heart, she packs her luggage, cuts off CCTV footage, and disables the house alarms. Just when she makes it to the garage, she spots Adrian's dog, whom he's tamed with a shock collar. Cecilia pities him and decides to set him free, but she mistakenly pushes him against Adrian's car, which triggers the house alarms and wakes Adrian up. She immediately runs away from there and ends up on a road, where her sister, Emily, comes to her rescue. As Cecilia is about to get away with Emily, Adrian catches her and breaks Emily's car window to capture Cecilia, but Emily accelerates the car and flees. Cecilia's sleeping pills get tossed out of the car and are discovered by Adrian. Scenes shift to 2 weeks after Cecilia's successful escape, and we see her crashing at her friend's place, who is a cop named James. Despite being in desperate need of intense therapy, James encourages her to step out of the house to overcome her fears. The moment Cecilia steps out of the house, she mistakes a jogging neighbor for Adrian and runs back inside. Later that day, Emily pays Cecilia a visit at James's place. She comes bearing good news for Cecilia and shows her a newspaper article, which has published an article on Adrian's attempted suicide a few days ago. Cecilia takes her time to process this news and finally feels comfortable moving on with her life. But little does she know what awaits her next. As the days pass, we see James raising his daughter Sydney on his own. One day, he hands Cecilia a letter addressed to her, which she finds weird because she hasn't given anyone James's address. Upon opening the letter, she finds out that she's been summoned to receive her part of the share from Adrian's will. She takes Emily to see Adrian's lawyer, Tom, who is also surprisingly Adrian's brother. He acts on Adrian's will and delivers Cecilia her share, which is $5 million. Since Cecilia is financially struggling, she accepts the money. The first thing she does with the money is buy James a new ladder because he's renovating his house. She also surprises Sydney with a bank account, in which she will deposit $10,000 every month for an entire year to fund her college expenses. Cecilia does this out of love because she considers Sydney and James her family. After spending some happy hours with them, Cecilia heads back to her room and hangs a new dress that she's recently purchased with Adrian's money. A strange series of events begins from that moment on, beginning with the disappearance of Cecilia's new dress. She remains composed and chooses to ignore this. The next morning, James announces that he's leaving for work before breakfast, so Cecilia briefly moves away from the stove to see James off. When she returns, she's shocked to see her breakfast pan on fire. Sydney comes to her rescue and extinguishes the fire. The following night, Cecilia is alone at home, so she easily gets paranoid and senses someone's presence in the house. She slowly checks every corner of the house, but doesn't find anything unusual other than the front door wide open. When she steps outside to take a look, we witness an invisible entity breathing right beside her, which leaves the audience in utter shock. Later that night, the invisible entity pulls her blanket off her, which wakes her up. She's currently sharing a room with Sydney, so she doesn't react, and quietly gets up to pick the blanket from the floor. When she drags the blanket back to the bed, the invisible man stomps on it. Cecilia witnesses his presence for the first time and flips out. She immediately screams and calls James, which also wakes Sydney up. She tries to tell them what she's experienced, but they indirectly convey that she must be hallucinating. Now, ignoring these events, Cecilia shows up at a job interview where she nervously faces the interviewer. When she opens her bag to get her documents out, she finds the bag empty. She becomes so mortified by the event that she faints right there. The scenes shift to the hospital, where James has brought Cecilia to run some blood tests. Cecilia heads back home and takes a shower, during which her doctor worriedly calls her to convey that they found a significant amount of drugs in her blood, due to which she fainted earlier. When she returns to the bathroom, she finds the same pills that she had used to drug Adrian on her escape night. Her paranoia triggers and makes her believe that Adrian is still alive. Hence, she visits Tom in James's presence and shows him the pills that magically appeared in James's bathroom. She also claims that Adrian is using a new invention to make himself invisible. Tom reminds Cecilia that Adrian was the biggest manipulator who had a way of getting into people's heads. Based on this known fact, Tom concludes that Adrian, in advance, had implanted fearful thoughts in Cecilia about haunting her after his death, due to which she has started to believe that he's haunting her. After seeing Tom, Cecilia decides to visit Emily, but Emily doesn't welcome her into her home after claiming to have received a resentful email from her. Cecilia swears that she has not sent any such mail, but when she returns home to check it, her outbox shows that she indeed has sent a very bitter email to Emily. As these peculiar events start to pile up, Cecilia loses her sanity. She falls to the ground and cries all night long. Sydney finds her crying, so she comes to comfort her, but the invisible entity smacks her across the face and makes it look like Cecilia has hit her. James also witnesses this and starts to believe Cecilia has gone mad. He insults her and tells her to move out. Once James storms out in anger, Cecilia decides to expose the invisible Adrian. She scatters coffee powder all over the house's floor and waits for him to show up. Strangely, the invisible entity doesn't show up this time. Out of curiosity, Cecilia dials Adrian's phone number, only to hear his phone ringing in James's attic. Finding it oddly scary, she uses the ladder to climb up to the attic. To her surprise, she discovers Adrian's phone, in which he's taken pictures of her sleeping in Sydney's bed. Suddenly, she receives a text from an unknown number which says, "Surprise." As if this isn't freaky enough, Cecilia finds a knife and the blueprints of Adrian's house. Suddenly, the invisible man topples the ladder to trap her in the attic, but Cecilia quickly throws white paint on him and makes him visible. Now that he's easy to trace, she jumps out of the attic with the knife and follows him to the kitchen, where he has already cleaned the paint using tap water and has become invisible again. Now he lifts Cecilia in the air and throws her away. He starts abusing her by tossing her around the house and choking her simultaneously. Poor Cecilia goes through a near-death experience. After which she escapes the house and takes a cab to Adrian's house. She reaches there the next morning as it is out of town. She barges into his house, which now gives off eerie vibes. She finally discovers the invisible suit in his lab and becomes relieved to know that she can prove her innocence now. Suddenly, Adrian's dog barks and alerts Cecilia to his arrival. She steals the suit and hides in the closet, but Adrian finds her and attacks her once again. This time, the dog intervenes and allows Cecilia to run from there. Cecilia urgently meets Emily at a restaurant and tells her the truth she's discovered just now. Sadly, the invisible man arrives there and kills Emily using a knife, which he places in Cecilia's hands and frames her. This impacts Cecilia psychologically, and she starts to look like a crazy person. She's immediately taken to a treatment facility, where she becomes so out of control that the medical staff sedates her. The invisible man arrives there as well and says the word, "Surprise," again. When she wakes up, James and another officer investigate her for Emily's assassination. She spooks them out by talking about Adrian haunting her. She even suspects that he's in a room with them right now. They get convinced that Cecilia has gone mad, so they get her checked out, during which it is revealed that she's pregnant. She becomes disturbed by this revelation and realizes that Adrian has impregnated her after his suicide shenanigans because she was regularly taking contraceptive pills before that. Things come to light when Tom visits Cecilia and persuades her to keep the child if she wants to keep Adrian's will money. On top of that, he admits that Adrian is alive and that she must take him back if she wants things to go back to being normal. Cecilia rejects his offer and manages to steal a pen from him. The following night, she deliberately pretends to cut her wrists using Tom's pen and lures the invisible man, who is willing to do anything to save his child inside Cecilia. Cecilia stabs the man with the pen multiple times, which damages his suit and causes it to glitch. Hearing their commotion, some armed guards show up and witness the invisible man. He ends up beating them to death and escaping. Cecilia grabs one of their guns and goes after the invisible man. She confronts him in the parking lot where rain starts to pour. There, he reveals his plans to hurt Sydney and James since he can't harm Cecilia due to her pregnancy. Cecilia immediately drives home and calls James to alert him, but the Invisible Man arrives there before her and starts to beat Sydney up. When James comes to her rescue, he brutally beats him up. Cecilia arrives simultaneously and uses the fire extinguisher to make him visible, after which she shoots him multiple times. Things take a wild turn when Cecilia removes the Invisible Man's mask and finds Tom underneath the invisible suit. The police raid Adrian's house and find him chained up in his basement. Cecilia knows Adrian better than anyone, so she confirms that Adrian has framed Tom and that he is still pulling all the strings. The police let Adrian go after considering him a victim, so Cecilia and James come up with a plan of their own to catch him. Cecilia tapes a wire under her shirt and visits Adrian. She puts up the innocent act and gets Adrian to confess that he was indeed behind the entire plan. When she goes to the bathroom to calm herself, Adrian slits his throat and takes his life, which gets recorded on the CCTV camera. When she finds him on the floor, bleeding, she calls 911 and starts to panic. Hearing this, James shows up. In front of him, Cecilia puts up a charade and cries while reporting how Adrian took his life out of guilt. James does see the invisible suit in Cecilia's bag, which indicates that she killed Adrian, but James goes along with her statement and ends the interrogation. As Cecilia walks the earth free for the first time, the film ends. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more awesome recaps.